much for watching this video. So in this tutorial we're going to learn how to make 8 pieces blouse. Let's get started. So here with me I already have my bodice block drafted on fold, because we're going to be needing to draft this on fold. So draft your basic bodice block on fold. So I'm already gone ahead to indicate the lines, and this is my underbust line, which is my shoulder to underbust measurement. Then here we have our bust depth, which is my my shoulder to nipple measurement. So from the top line, I'm just confirming from the top line, I mark down my shoulder to nipple measurement, which is 9.5, and you should also make sure to redraw your bust dart to that point over there. And if you don't know where that is, but if you draft a basic bodice block, you should know that that is your bust span, which is your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Also redraw your waist dart to that end over there. And since this is going to be like a long blouse, I used a torso block, which to get a torso block you just need to mark down your hip depth, which is your waist to hip measurement. Then I just labeled this my hip depth. Then from the center front, I came in by my nipple to nipple divided by 2. Then I came up from that point by 2 inches. So that is how I got this torso block. So now I'm just labeling this my waistline. So this is my waistline. Okay, so what you do next is you're going to find the midpoint of your armhole. So I'm just measuring the circumference of my armhole, and I'm going to divide it by 2, and I got the midpoint. So now from that midpoint, what you're going to do is redraw it to your bust point. And remember I said your bust point is your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So I'll just take a ruler and redraw it to my bust point. So I took a ruler and I redrew this from Now after redrawing to your bust point, you're just going to be marking 0.5 inches on both sides of that mid armhole point, creating a dart. So I marked 0.5 inches on both sides, making it a total of 1 inch. So after marking 0.5 inches on both sides, you're just going to take your French curve, or you can use any curve that is you're comfortable with. And I'm just going to create like a slightly curvy line, not too curvy, not too straight, just a slightly curvy line. And I'll withdraw those 2 points to my bust point, like so. So after doing that, we have to increase one of our armhole lines. So I'm just going to be redrawing this line like so, and I'm going to be replacing that 1 inch that remember we marked 0.5 inches on both sides, making it a total of 1 inch, and I'm going to replace it. And why are we doing this? This is because when we join the curves together, you will notice that one line will be shorter than the other, so you have to replace it. So now I'll also replace that I took on my armhole, because remember that we took a 0.5 inches dart on both sides, so we have to replace it to our armhole. So you have to increase your armhole by 1 inch. So from my armhole depth, I'm just going to mark 1 inch from the side, and that is going to be my new armhole. So now we can take our curve, our French curve, and join the 2 points together. Okay, drawing the armhole, and now that we have done this, we have to contour the underbust. And to contour my underbust, I like using my dart amount. And if you don't already know how to get your own personal dart amount, I'll drop a link in the description below where I talked about how to get your personal dart amount. So I normally use my dart amount to contour my underbust. So that is my dart intake. I use my dart intake to contour my underbust. What I do is that I mark my dart intake on both sides, and my dart intake is most people use 0.5 for that dart intake, but to get your personal dart amount, my dart intake is 0.9 inches. So I mark 0.9 inches on both sides of each dart legs. So now that I've done that, from our bust point, that is the side going to the armhole, I mark in 0.25 inches. So please note the side I'm marking it on is the side that has the armhole. So I now use like if my French curve to connect from that 0.25 inches point to the point I made on my underbust. Remember, I marked that amount on both sides, which is 0.9 inches on both sides. So I'll also use my French curve to connect from my bust point again to the other inches I marked on my, to the other point I marked on my underbust line. Now I'll be showing you another method on how to contour your underbust in case you don't like my method, and all you have to do is measure your underbust. And for example, if my underbust is 35 inches, I'm just using a random number. If my underbust is 35 inches, I'll divide that by 4 and I'll mark the result on my underbust line. So I divided my underbust, round underbust measurement by 4 and marked the result on my underbust line. And then I'll now measure from that point. Look at that point I made. I'll measure from that point I made to the side. So like I said, underbust divided by 4, mark, then measure what you have, and I got 1 inch. So if you divide 1 inch by 2, that's 0.5 inches. So I'll be marking 0.5 inches on both sides, and then I'll use my French curve to connect to my bust point just like I did before. So this is another method on how to contour your underbust. Please use whatever works for you. So now after contouring the underbust, what you do next is you're not going to take a straight ruler and connect and redraw your darts to the hem. So you have to redraw from your underbust to your waistline. So your underbust to your waistline, then to the hem. So now I just took my straight ruler and I redrew that to the hem. So I'll also do the same thing for the other side, from my underbust to my waist, that's that leg on my waist, to the hem. So this is what we have. And now what I like to do is I just like to curve this back into my underbust line or my waistline. You can add the 1 inch back to your pattern. Remember that we increase the armhole depth by 1 inch. You can add it back to your pattern, but what I like to just do is blend it like so, because I do not like any excess in my clothes. I like my clothes very, very fitted. So you can add yours back. So this is what I did. I just blended it over, but you can add 1 inch around your pattern since you increased your armhole by 1 inch. It all depends on you. Both ways works. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be closing our bust dart, but because it's on fold, we cannot just close our bust dart like that. So what I like to do is just take my tracing wheel and I'm going to be tracing my bust dart so that it can appear on both sides. So yeah, I'm just using my tracing wheel to trace my bust dart just so that it can appear on both sides of the paper, and you see exactly why we did this. So now that I've traced my bust dart, I am now safe to cut the pattern. So I'm now cutting the pattern. Now we have to close the bust dart, and I do this by slashing through one of the dart leg, toe but not through. Make sure not to cut all through the paper, and then I take this and close the other dart legs like so, and use my tape to hold it down. So since we drafted this on fold, we have 2 pieces of the side front. So now I also have to close the bust dart of the side front, and this was the purpose of us tracing our bust dart, just so it can appear on this other side. So I'll now take my scissors and also slash toe and not through the edge like this, the end of the bust dart, and then I'll take the paper and use it to close the other dart legs and use my tape to hold it down. So I've also gone ahead to label this pattern, and here I have my side front 1, center front 1, center front 2, and side front 2, just so I know which I'm joining to which. So this is what we have, and the next step is I'm just going to place this and align it together with the other center front, because I didn't notice that I didn't trace out my underbust line. So I'm just doing this just so I can get the underbust line and so it will be equal. So please also make sure to trace out your waistline, because that is really necessary. You're going to be needing it. So I'll just use my ruler now and redraw my underbust line for the other side. So now, since it's going to be an 8 pieces blouse, we're going to be adding a zipper to the front. So I'm just going to be slashing through the center front just so that we can have 4 pieces, and so that I'll be able to add the zipper. So now, like you can see, we have 4 pieces, and we're also going to have 4 pieces for the back also. So now you're just going to place them underneath a new pattern paper, and I couldn't get everything on my pattern paper because my table is a bit too short, and I'll be showing you what to do. So first, you're going to redraw your waistline. So take a ruler, redraw your waistline. Take a ruler, redraw your hip line. After redrawing the waistline and hip line, from the hip line at the side, come in or out by 3.5 inches. And also mark 3.5 inches on the other end. Then connect that 3.5 inches back to your waistline like so, using a straight line. So I did that for both sides, and now we're going to be increasing the hem by 1 inch. And the reason why we did this is just so that we can get a smooth curve and not a pointy curve. So I increased the hem by 1 inch, and now I'm just going to be redrawing my hip line down, just so that I can find the midpoint. So I measured what I had there and I found the midpoint, and the reason why I did this is just so I can know how I'll redraw my curve. So now I measured like I said, then marked down the midpoint. Then I'll be taking my French curve or my pattern master, and I'll redraw from that end there to the midpoint I made. Then I'll do this for the other side. So now, after doing this, you're just going to follow the same step and do this for all the other sides of your pattern paper. So I did exactly that for the other panels. Like you can see here, I increased the hem by 3.5 inches. But if you notice, the part was supposed to have the zipper, which is the center front. Look at it like this. Is the center front, these are the side fronts. So this center front piece, that is the place we're supposed to have the zipper. You will notice that I didn't increase that side, just that side. I increased both sides for the side front, but the center front I only increased one side. That is the side that has my armhole. So like you can see, I only came in 3.5 inches from one side and connected over there, and I didn't add to the zipper part, but it's your choice. You can add to the zipper part if you want. So now we're going to be working on the back piece, and I already have my back pattern also drafted on fold. So I'm just going to label this my waistline, because this is my waistline. Label this my hip line, which is also my hip depth. Okay, so now also going to label this my bust line or my underarm line. So it depends on you, whatever you want to call it. Then I'm going to find the midpoint of my armhole, just like I did for the front, and I did that. So I'm just going to be redrawing that midpoint on my armhole back to my waist. So here I took my French curve and my marker, and I'm just making the points visible so that we can all see it, and I just use a curve to redraw all the way to the that, like this. So I'm just smoothing it out, and I'm going to extend it. Like you see, I extended just like I did for the front, and I came up by 1 inch. Like I said, the reason why we're extending this is because So I came up by 0.5 inches. Yeah, I came up by 0.5 inches, and I'll be reconnecting this back to my underarm. Like I said, the reason why we are increasing this is because when we join curves, you'll notice that one is shorter than the other. So to avoid that, that is why we increase this. So now I'm going to be redrawing my dart all the way to my hem. Okay, like this, and I'm going to be redrawing my waist dart all the way to my hem, just like we did for the front. So now we can go ahead and cut this. Okay, so I'm just making notch points. The reason for this notch points is when we are sewing and we want to join, so that we will know where to join. So these are called notch points. So now I can now cut this pattern out. You can see that the back pattern was very easy to draft. It was not as complicated as the front, and I'm going to be getting 4 pieces for my back also. So here I'm just placing them together like this, and make sure to trace your waist, because remember we need the waist to increase slash and spread, whatever they call it. And I'm also using my oh my god, what they call it, what have I forgotten, tracing wheel. I'm also using my tracing wheel to trace my notches, and I'm also using my tracing wheel to trace my waistline, just like you can see me doing the video. Sorry guys, I forgot. You know, sometimes we forget things. And I'm also placing my side fronts on top of each other so that they won't move, and I also trace the waist. So now I've opened up my pattern, and this is what we have, and I'm just going to make those notches I traced with my tracing wheel visible. And the reason why we trace is so that we can appear on both sides, because it was drafted on fold, like you can remember. And I'm just redrawing my waistline, also redrawing my waistline over here on the pattern that does not have the paper, that does not have marker. And I'm just going to be labeling this side back. Sorry guys, I wrote side front, but I corrected that later. So this is side back 1, center back 1, sorry, center back 2, and side back 2, so that I know how I'm going to be joining the panels when we're cutting, and I won't be confused. That's the point of labeling this. So now remember that we need this is 8 pieces blouse, so we need to make this 4 pieces. So we're going to be cutting off the center back. So for my back pattern, remember that our back is not straight. Our back is actually curvy. If you notice, the waist side is actually going inwards, so we need to contour the waist. So what I do is that for my center back, that's the part that's supposed to have the zipper, I come in by 2 centimeters. Remember, 2 centimeters, not inches, centimeters please. So I come in by 2 centimeters like so, and I'll just take my straight rule and redraw all the way to the ends of my neckline like this, and that's how I contour. Then I also take the ruler and connect it all the way to my hip line, just so that I can't have any bulging, and it can be very like a perfect fit. Remember I said I like tight clothes, so I don't like any kind of excess on my clothes. So that's the reason I do this, and we're just going to cut this off. If you think about it, the reason why we do this is because our measuring tape cannot go inside. I know that place goes inside, so our measuring tape cannot go inside, so don't be scared that it's going to affect anything. So now we have all our panels ready, and we're just going to be doing the same thing we did for our front for the back. So if you can remember what we did, we placed we placed the pattern on a new pattern paper, the panel on a new pattern paper. We increased the hip line or hem line by 3.5 inches, marking 3.5 inches on both sides. We're drawing it to the waistline like so, using our ruler. We're drawing it to the waistline, and we did it on both sides. Increase the hem by 1 inch, just so that we cannot get a pointy end. Then we drew our hip like so down to the hem, or the 1 inch we came in by, sorry. Then we found the midpoint, then we drew each ends on our hip line down to that midpoint of the 1 inch line that we made. I hope you guys understand and I'm not confusing you. So here I'm just using the scissors and cutting this off, and what you're going to do is that you're going to do follow the same step for the other panels, exactly the same step. Don't be scared, just follow exactly the same step. So I did that, and this is what we have. And we have four panels here, and I've all added the extra inches at the hip line. And if you notice something, there's one difference. If you notice my center back, I added 3.5 inches on both sides, unlike my center front where I only added on one side. On my center back, I added it on both sides. So if you can look at this, that is the part that's supposed to have the zipper. So I brought my center front, and if you notice, I just added it on one side. So I just want you guys to understand, I added it on one side. I didn't add it to the side that has my zipper for some reasons. But for the center back, I added it on both sides. So it's your choice, you can add it on both sides if you like. So here we have 8 panels, counting 3, this 4, this 5, this 6, this 7, this 8 panels. Oh my god, guys, I really enjoyed drafting this pattern. It was really fun. So in our next tutorial, we're going to be using these 8 panels to sew our 8 pieces blouse. See you next time in the sewing tutorial. Bye.